History is packed with pirates: Blackbeard, Calico Jack, Captain Kidd. Their names echo through time, synonymous with terror on the high seas. But the single most successful pirate in all of history wasn't any of them. In fact, the most successful pirate of all time wasn't even a man. She was a former prostitute from Canton who clawed her way up from a floating brothel to command a fleet that some estimate reached nearly 2,000 ships and an army of over 70,000 outlaws. She brought the world's most powerful empires to their knees, wrote her own laws, and then she did something no other pirate lord had ever managed. She retired. Wealthy, powerful, and free. This is the story of Zheng Yi Sao, the pirate queen who ruled the Chinese seas. Our story kicks off not on the high seas, but in the chaotic, sprawling port city of Canton, known today as Guangzhou, in the late 18th century. Sometime around 1775, a girl was born whose real name has been lost to history. She would become known to the world by many names, but most famously as Zheng Yi Sao, which simply means wife of Zheng Yi. But before she was a wife, or a commander, or a queen, she was a young woman named Xu Yang, living in a world of few options and immense hardship. The Pearl River Delta was teeming with life and conflict. It was the gateway for nearly all foreign trade into China, a bustling hub of merchants, sailors, and officials. But under that veneer of commerce, it was a place of desperation. For many women born into poverty, there were few paths to survival. Xu Yang found herself working as a prostitute on one of Canton's infamous floating brothels, the flower boats that catered to the city's transient population. Life on a flower boat was dangerous, a world of exploitation. But it was also a unique classroom. Here, a woman with sharp wits could learn more about the world than in any school. She overheard the secrets of merchants, the tactics of sailors, the weaknesses of officials, and the flow of money and power. She learned to be a shrewd negotiator and a keen judge of character, skills far more valuable than gold in the world she was about to enter. She wasn't just surviving, she was observing, learning, and waiting for her shot. That shot arrived in 1801 in the form of the most notorious pirate in the South China Sea. His name was Zheng Yi, a formidable pirate captain from a family with a long history of piracy. Accounts of how they met vary. Some say he raided her brothel and, captivated by her beauty and defiance, took her as his prize. But another version, one that feels more in line with the woman she became, suggests a far more calculated arrangement. This story claims she agreed to marry the pirate lord on one non-negotiable condition. She wouldn't be just a wife, but an equal partner. She demanded a 50% share of his plunder and an equal say in the command of his fleet. Think about the sheer audacity of that. In the early 19th century, in a world dominated by men, in a profession defined by violence, a prostitute was negotiating terms of equal partnership with a pirate king. It was an unprecedented power play. And remarkably, Zheng Yi agreed. He saw in her not just a wife, but a strategic asset, a mind as sharp and ruthless as his own. She became Zheng Yi Sao, the wife of Zheng Yi, and stepped from the brothel onto the deck of a pirate junk, ready to start her real career. When Zheng Yi Sao joined her husband, she wasn't just marrying into a gang of thugs. She was joining a massive, complex enterprise. Zheng Yi was a brilliant pirate in his own right and had already started the ambitious project of uniting the feuding pirate gangs of the South China Sea into a single, powerful confederation. For years, these fleets had fought each other as often as they fought the authorities. Zheng Yi, with his wife now as his chief organizer, changed everything. Together, they were a force of nature. While Zheng Yi had the vision, Zheng Yi Sao possessed the administrative genius to make it real. She helped forge alliances, manage the logistics of a massive fleet, and built the connections needed to turn scattered outlaws into a coherent organization. By 1805, they had done it. They had established a grand pirate confederation of over 400 ships and between 40,000 to 60,000 pirates. This wasn't just a fleet, it was a floating government. It was divided into 6 squadrons, each flying a colored flag: red, black, blue, white, yellow, and purple. Zheng Yi himself commanded the largest and most powerful, the Red Flag Fleet. This structure allowed them to control huge swaths of the coastline, dominating trade routes and terrorizing communities with brutal efficiency. They had become the unofficial rulers of the South China Sea. For 6 years, Zheng Yi Sao learned everything about leading this pirate nation. She was an active partner, earning her place not just through marriage, but through competence. She raised her husband's adopted son, Zhang Bao, and had a biological son of her own, cementing her position in the hierarchy. But her true test, the moment that would define her legacy, came in 1807. At the very height of his power, Zheng Yi's luck ran out. He was caught in a typhoon and drowned at sea, leaving the massive confederation without a leader. In that chaos, a power vacuum opened up. For any other woman, this would have been the end. A pirate's widow was expected to vanish into obscurity. The other 5 fleet commanders, all powerful and ambitious men, started circling, ready to claim the throne. But Zheng Yi Sao was not any other woman. She had spent 6 years preparing for this, and she wasn't about to let her empire crumble. With her husband gone, Zheng Yi Sao's situation was critical. She was a woman in a man's world, a widow whose authority was tied to her late husband. The confederation, her life's work, was on the verge of shattering as rival captains vied for control. She had to act, and she had to be decisive. Her first move was a masterstroke of political cunning. She identified the key to power: her late husband's adopted son and protege, a young, charismatic, and fiercely capable commander named Zhang Bao. Zhang Bao commanded immense loyalty, especially within the powerful Red Flag Fleet. Zheng Yi Sao knew she needed his support, but a simple alliance wouldn't be enough. She needed to bind him to her cause permanently. So she forged a partnership with him, both political and personal, by becoming his lover. This alliance was shocking, but brilliant. By securing the loyalty of the most respected commander in the fleet, she instantly solidified her power base. The other captains, faced with the unified force of Zheng Yi's widow and his chosen successor, were completely outmaneuvered. Before they could make a move, she had already seized control. But respect in the pirate world can't be inherited or won in the bedroom. It has to be earned with action. Zheng Yi Sao quickly proved she was more than a figurehead. She didn't just maintain the confederation, she expanded it. Under her command, the pirate fleet swelled to staggering numbers. By some estimates, she commanded a force of over 1,800 ships and more than 70,000 pirates. To put that in perspective, that's a larger naval force than many nations could muster at the time. Her fleet wasn't just a collection of pirates, it was the most formidable navy in the region. Her leadership was ruthless and effective. She wasn't a distant commander. She was said to have wielded a cutlass alongside her crews, leading from the front and establishing a fearsome reputation. The woman who had once been known only as the wife of Zheng Yi had now totally eclipsed her husband. She was no longer a consort, she was the undisputed queen of the Chinese seas. And how did she manage such a massive and unruly organization? She did it with a system of governance so advanced and so strict, it was revolutionary. How do you command an army of tens of thousands of violent outlaws, all motivated by greed and prone to infighting? Zheng Yi Sao transformed her chaotic horde into a disciplined organization, bound by a strict and non-negotiable code of law. This wasn't some friendly pirate's code, it was a rigidly enforced legal system. The penalty for breaking most of its articles was immediate execution. Disobeying a direct order, you're beheaded on the spot. Trying to give your own commands or going ashore without permission was a capital offense. This absolute discipline created a clear chain of command and prevented the squabbles that had plagued pirate gangs for centuries. But her code went far beyond military discipline. It governed the very fabric of pirate life. First, she completely changed how loot was handled. Under her law, pirates were only allowed to keep 20% of their plunder. The remaining 80% went into a massive communal treasury. This fund was used for the collective good, to repair ships, buy weapons and supplies, and support the families of the pirates. This brilliant system turned individual greed into collective strength, ensuring every pirate had a vested interest in the success of the entire confederation. Perhaps the most remarkable part of her code was how it treated women. Drawing from her own past, Zheng Yi Sao enacted laws that were shockingly progressive. Any pirate who sexually assaulted a female captive was executed immediately. If a pirate wanted to take a captive woman as his wife, he could, but the code demanded absolute fidelity from him. Captive women were to be treated with respect, and any who weren't taken as wives were to be released unharmed. In a world where female captives were considered disposable property, Zheng Yi Sao enforced a moral code that was unheard of, even in so-called civilized society. With her laws in place and her fleet unified, she built an economic empire. Her pirates didn't just rob ships, they controlled entire industries. They took over the lucrative salt trade and established a vast protection racket, forcing coastal villages and merchants to pay her for safe passage. Those who paid were left alone. Those who resisted were brutally raided. She was no longer just a pirate. She was the head of a shadow government, collecting taxes, controlling trade, and operating with near-total impunity. Her red flag fleet had become a terror to the Qing Dynasty and a problem for the world's superpowers. By 1808, Zheng Yi Sao's power was absolute. Her fleets patrolled the South China Sea, strangling trade and openly mocking the Qing Emperor. The government could no longer ignore the pirate queen on its doorstep. They launched a massive naval campaign to destroy her. It was a complete disaster. In a single year, her pirates destroyed 63 ships of the provincial Qing Navy, nearly half its fleet. The imperial forces were outfought, outmaneuvered, and utterly humiliated. Realizing they couldn't beat her alone, the Qing government turned to foreign powers for help. They enlisted the Portuguese Navy from Macau and even sought assistance from the British, whose East India Company wanted secure trade routes. It was a coalition of empires against one pirate queen, and they still couldn't win. Zheng Yi Sao consistently defeated the forces sent against her, solidifying her reputation as invincible. But Zheng Yi Sao was a realist. She knew that while she was winning every battle, the war itself was becoming impossible to sustain. The Qing government, though weakened, was relentless. They started offering huge bounties and amnesty to any pirate who would defect. One of her key commanders, the leader of the Black Flag Fleet, switched sides, taking his powerful fleet with him. The pressure from the Chinese, Portuguese, and British was mounting. She was at the height of her power, but she knew it couldn't last forever. Most pirate lords would have fought to the bitter end, going down in a blaze of glory. Zheng Yi Sao chose a different path. She decided to do the unthinkable, negotiate her own retirement. In the spring of 1810, Zheng Yi Sao made her boldest move yet. She didn't wait to be defeated. Instead, she chose the time and place of her surrender, approaching the Governor-General of the Qing Dynasty to negotiate. But this was no ordinary surrender. When initial talks led by Zhang Bao stalled, she took matters into her own hands. In a stunning display of confidence, Zheng Yi Sao sailed her fleet to Canton, walked right into the Governor-General's office, unarmed and uninvited, with only a delegation of pirate women and children, and refused to leave until he heard her demands. She wasn't begging for mercy. She was dictating the terms of a peace treaty, and her terms were astonishing. First, a full and total amnesty for herself and every single one of her thousands of pirates. No one would be prosecuted. Second, she demanded that her pirates be allowed to keep their loot. Third, and most audaciously, she negotiated for many of her men to be absorbed into the Chinese military, basically getting them government jobs. For her partner, Zhang Bao, she secured an official rank as an officer in the Qing Navy, and, as some records note, permission for him to keep a private fleet of around 20 ships. It was less a surrender and more a corporate merger where she set the terms. The Qing government, desperate to end a problem they could not defeat militarily, agreed to almost everything. On April 20th, 1810, Zheng Yi Sao, at just 35 years old, officially retired from piracy. She had fought the world's most powerful empires to a standstill, and then negotiated a retirement package that left her wealthy, powerful, and most importantly, free. Zheng Yi Sao's story is one of the most incredible, yet often overlooked, tales in all of maritime history. It's a powerful reminder that the real figures from our past are often more remarkable than any character from fiction. If you're enjoying these deep dives into history, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. After her unprecedented retirement, Zheng Yi Sao settled down. She was officially permitted to marry Zhang Bao, and when he died in 1822, she returned to her home province. But she didn't just fade away. She used her vast wealth to open and run a successful gambling house, remaining a powerful and influential figure until her death in 1844 at the ripe old age of around 69. The woman who started her life in a brothel ended it as a wealthy and respected businesswoman, having lived a life more extraordinary than any storybook. By pretty much any measure, the size of her fleet, the number of people under her command, her immense wealth, and the fact she was never defeated, she is the most successful pirate in history. Her story challenges our entire image of a pirate, proving that leadership, intelligence, and ruthlessness have no gender. She even inspired the character of Mistress Qing in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, a small nod to a woman whose real-life accomplishments dwarf those of her fictional counterparts. Yet for all her success, her legacy is complex. She was a brilliant strategist and a revolutionary leader who created a code that protected women. She was also a ruthless criminal responsible for the plunder of countless villages and the deaths of thousands. So what should we make of the Pirate Queen? Was she a proto-feminist icon who shattered the gender norms of her time? Or was she simply a brilliant tyrant who built an empire on fear? Let us know what you think in the comments below.